The Newsday continues here on One News Now. I'm Diego Castro. Police Major General Benjamin Acorda Jr. has been named the new National Police Chief. Acorda headed the PNP's Directorate for Intelligence and the Police Regional Office in Region 10. He also previously served as head of intelligence for the National Capital Region Police Office. Acorda hails from La Union, with his father serving as lawyer for Public Attorney's Office in the province. The new PNP chief replaces Rodolfo Azurin Jr., who has reached the retirement age of 56. According to a copy of Acorda's appointment papers, his appointment is effective today, April 24. The change of command ceremony and retirement honors for Azurin is underway at Camp Crame. The Foreign Ministry of Saudi Arabia has announced that some Filipinos were among the first evacuees from war-hit Sudan who arrived in Jeddah on Saturday. In a statement, the Foreign Ministry said over 150 people, including foreign diplomats and officials, were rescued from Sudan and brought to Jeddah in the first evacuation of civilians since fighting began. Among those evacuated were 91 Saudi citizens and around 66 nationals, including diplomats from 12 other countries: the Philippines, Canada, UAE, India, and Kuwait, among others. The Philippine government says it is also preparing to evacuate more Filipinos. President Bongbong Marcos said the government is taking steps for the safe evacuation of Filipinos out of the Sudanese capital of Khartoum, where most of the clashes are taking place. Marcos said the government is already preparing assets that may be involved in the evacuation efforts.
We are just waiting to get better information as to whether or not it will be safe to bring our evacuees out of Khartoum, perhaps into Cairo.
Meanwhile, the Philippine Embassy in Egypt advises Filipinos that the airports in Sudan remain closed since April 15 and that there is no safe option for air evacuation at this time. The embassy advises Filipinos in Sudan that there are announcements on ceasefires being agreed to, but there are still gunshots and bombings in certain areas. Filipinos in Sudan are advised to remain in their homes and away from windows and rooftops. The embassy assures them that the consulate is currently working on ways to secure food and water and other supplies for delivery or pickup. The embassy is calling on Filipinos in Sudan to send clear copies of their passport and residence visa via email. Contact information are flashed on your screens. The LTO is extending the validity of new motorcycles to up to 3 years. Under current guidelines, only motorcycles with an engine displacement of 201cc and above are qualified for a 3-year validity of their initial registration. But following studies conducted by the agency, it has decided to give a similar 3-year registration validity even for motorcycles with engine displacement of 200cc and below. LTO says the initiative is part of their measures to, quote, fast-track the processing and provide further convenience to the transacting public. The new memorandum will take effect on May 15 and is seen to benefit at least 2 million riders with newly registered motorcycles that have engine displacements of 200cc and below. Earlier, the LTO has also announced that validity of driver's licenses set to expire by today have been extended until October 31, off the back of a shortage in plastic cards. We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on the One News. Don't forget your mask when taking the train. As the Transportation Department says, the mask mandate will be strictly enforced across all lines. The Transportation Department says wearing of face masks will remain mandatory inside the MRT 3 and both LRT lines 1 and 2. This as the department maintains preventive measures against COVID-19 amid rising cases across the country. The policy, however, becomes optional for the PNR line, which the agency considers an open-air space. Aside from mask wearing, the DOTR encouraged the riding public to get boosted against COVID-19. A new movie about the rise and fall of BlackBerry comes out next month. And Bloomberg spoke to actor Jay Baruchel, one of the stars of BlackBerry. Let's listen in.
Time now for today's For What It's Worth. Our number, $83 billion. That's how much the business behind BlackBerry was worth back in 2008. Back then, it was called Research in Motion. At the time, Apple was worth twice as much as BlackBerry. Today, it's 1,000 times more valuable than its former rival. A new Hollywood movie about BlackBerry's rise and fall is coming out next month. Earlier, we spoke with the actor Jay Baruchel, who plays one of the company's co-founders in the film.
The world that we live in today rests in large part on the shoulders of what these nerds did in Kitchener in the end of the 90s. So, and they're not household names. I think there's often a cult of personality around sort of tech titans and innovators.
Yeah.
And for the most part, these guys are kind of still under the radar. And their end is somewhat tragic, at least narratively, because they went from almost half the market share to zero once after the advent of the iPhone. So it has everything you want out of a good story, plus utter anonymity, which is a chronically Canadian thing.
There you go, Alex.
Okay, is anyone over 40 going to see that movie, though? And I say that, like, jokingly, but, I mean, I remember when the ticker was RIMM, and it was Research in Motion, but, like, anyone younger than me isn't going to know what BlackBerry is or care.
Well, I think what's interesting about this is that while the bones of the story are there, that they did take a series of creative liberties to perhaps jazz it up. It's going to be interesting to see how the company itself reacts to it. But, you know, they're thinking of a Hollywood movie experience in all of this. But it is a reminder, obviously, too, of just what was a fascinating story. Yes, if you're over 40, but for anyone who covers business, of the rise and fall of a company that had a pretty high star at one point.
Totally, and I don't want to take away from the fact that it was a Canadian success story for business, so I totally can appreciate that as well. Man, I remember those days. There was a payphone in that trailer.
And Jay Baruchel was saying he only gave up his BlackBerry a couple of years ago. That was like the big headline for me, for an actor still using a BlackBerry up until a couple of years ago.
Yeah, no doubt.
And those are the top stories of the hour. Join us again at 9:45 a.m. as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. I'm Diego Castro. We are One News, all sides, all the time.